My name is Jagadananda Das. Originally from Zimbabwe, born and raised in Zimbabwe, and came to South Africa for university in 2013. And that's also where I met the devotees at the University of Pretoria in 2015, 10 years from now, 10 years back. And a few months later, after meeting the devotees, I also then met Maharaj. Yeah, also 10 years ago.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what convinced you about Krishna consciousness? What was so nice about it that you would take it up?
Yeah, I mean, at the time of my life, I was just kind of in my early 20s thinking about what life should be about. I had this idealistic notion that life should be lived in a certain way that would, so to speak, benefit most people or all people. And I believe there was such a way to live that would benefit more people. And I could see that no, the world isn't working by that way, whatever that way is. So I was kind of on a quest to find that way, if you will. And I came across the devotees, and specifically Prabhupada's. I was reading Prabhupada's books, and he made mention of the um, what can be now kind of summed up in the simple living, higher thinking catchphrase that he coined, but this idea of an agrarian lifestyle, a self-regulated lifestyle, where in which society and ecology can live in a certain kind of balance, and that would be pleasing to God or pleasing to the Supreme. That really resonated with me. So hearing Prabhupada speak about how he wanted this mission to really um, take on the guise of farm communities and sort of extra urban centers was really my calling, I think. I had
Okay.
seen the kind of urban centers and thought to myself, yeah, those are nice,
Yeah.
but I want the farm places. I want where we're producing our own milk and producing our own fruit and vegetables and producing our own milk.
Yeah.
That's what I was interested in. Yeah.
Okay. Who is this?
And so this is our young son, Maya Chandra,
Yeah.
and yeah,
You
he's
want to sit with daddy?
a little interested in what's going on. There we
Okay.
go.
Yeah. Daddy is talking about Krishna
And Maharaj. You
and
want to
Maharaj.
tell Harinam about Maharaj.
You know about Maharaj?
Okay, you just want to
Okay,
see
yes,
that.
Okay.
No problem.
Yeah. So were you studying like ecology or something like that?
Not even philosophy. Yeah, so I was studying philosophy, really trying to question what is the goal of life, what is the meaning of life, and how that meaning can be found in the way we live, or how it can be expressed in the way we live. That was really the crux of what I was trying to understand, especially in my younger years. And I could understand that, the kind of Western philosophy that we were studying was very divorced from a practice-related or experiential philosophy which I was really yearning for. I wanted to practice what I preach or practice what I had read about. And so that was again another appeal about Krishna consciousness. Was it seemed that this is a place where people are practicing what they believe, and not just practicing what they believe, but what they believe is reinforced by their practice. It seemed to be kind of reinforcing them. The theory enforces the practice reinforces the theory, and I was attracted to that, and still am, of course, and still try to help other people if they're coming to an understanding of spirituality, that it needs to be married with a practice. It needs to be experienced firsthand. You can't learn about spirituality from a book. Although a book will lead you to a place of practice, it's your practice that will make you a spiritualist. That's how I kind of started seeing the world.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what your background is, but coming to Krishna consciousness, was there any conflict between like your previous conceptions of spirituality and then what was presented in Krishna consciousness, or maybe like something, the externals of Krishna consciousness? Was there any conflict?
So, growing up, I grew up in a Christian home, like many people in Africa. but that was marred by a lot of confusion in my adolescent years because, without the practice element to it, right? I saw my parents practicing a faith that I didn't see them practicing a faith on a book, but I didn't see them practice in real life, or do the certain actions that engendered the spirituality that they were speaking about. It was very divorced from, I'm seeing one thing but we're hearing one thing in church, we're doing one thing, but so that made me very disillusioned to Christianity growing up. And so I started searching. I visited the mosque often in my early features before I joined Krishna Consciousness. I also dabbled with African shamanism, and I still keep quite good relations with one or two initiated shamans who you could say, consult and compare notes, if you will, on spiritual matters or on metaphysical matters, because I don't believe that there is also one perspective that the world should understand spirituality through. There's many different lenses, and for some people a certain perspective might be more apt at a time than others, and sometimes I even believe that about Krishna consciousness, that the message that we have, or at least that our acharyas have brought forth, be it an ultimate message, be it a message meant for the soul, may not be a message meant for the body.
Okay.
That the body needs to hear right now, and for the body to get to a point of realizing its soul inside. So the kind of way in which, and I think maybe this also speaks to how I see maybe proselytizing or preaching happening here in Africa, or should happen, or if you will, a really understanding the way in which people in the country or in the continent have been raised or have been brought up historically, leaves certain avenues that would be easier to approach them through to begin understanding spirituality. For example, being here in South Africa, where there's a strong kind of Christian element, but at the same time there's a very big emerging, so to speak, African or indigenous cultural worldviews coming up. And so grappling with these perspectives, us as Krishna conscious devotees, or as people who are trying to proselytize a certain kind of mission, a certain kind of way to spirituality, I think need to be more attentive to what's on the ground before we bring in what we already know. And that's not to say that we disregard our acharyas, disregard Prabhupada, disregard the institution. No, it just means be a mature preacher, understand your context, and bring the humanity first. And once you break that wall down, the kind of energy that happens within spiritual circles will convince someone. Once that first wall is broken down, I think. Okay. And of course, that remains to be, you could say, seen or tested in the world. It's something I personally practice. I try to relate to people in a very human way, in a very real way, before ever introducing myself as this or that or the other. But of course, when those conversations then do take that turn, I see it as having met someone at that door. We have more ground to cover together if we are going to then take down, so to speak, a spiritual journey or a conversation into spirituality.
Sure. I was just wondering, so you're talking about breaking down barriers when presenting Krishna consciousness. So obviously we're still an early movement in terms of presenting Krishna consciousness, especially to the African population. What do those barriers look like that we are making mistakes with?
Sure. So historically, as you might know, South Africa has gone through many kind of turbulent historical epochs. And the latest one was the kind of apartheid era, of the late 19th and 20th century that they kind of put blacks versus whites versus Indians versus coloreds in this kind of segregated socio-economic structure and politically as well. And what that did, because now you're looking at a generation after that's been 30 years since the abolishment of apartheid and democratization of South Africa, but the structural hierarchy still remains. Be it we're living in right now, we stay at a center here in Rondebosch in Cape Town, which is a very affluent area. This was one of the first areas that the colonial settlers settled, and still to this day remains an affluent area. You look at yards are bigger, more space, so to speak, higher value properties than where the large majority of black or other non-white people stay, which is very dense, high density populations, very meager, so to speak, service delivery, and the kind of inequality is very stark. I don't think I'll go too much into that history, but that initial social structural layer is then reinforced by a psychological layer, which again puts this hierarchy. If you're white or if you're lighter skinned, then you're better off or wealthier or there and there and there, and of course the opposite if the other. And so that puts people at a psychological conundrum when either wanting to join something that looks, you might have an Indian body, or the majority of the society might be white bodied or other racial category. From the outset, it looks different than who I am, but not just different in physical, because coming from a different part of the world, you may just see color as difference in a very minuscule way, whereas here it was ingrained in a social, political, economic way. And so when someone sees that, okay, maybe I'm different, it has a lot more layers than just my skin color different. It means maybe I don't understand things intellectually the same. Maybe it means I don't have the economic bandwidth to be around here. Maybe it means I don't have, there's different layers and insinuendos that because of this kind of psychological warfare that's happened for over generations, it's made people feel inferior automatically and made some people feel superior. So that's kind of inferior superiority complex kind of pervades everyone, and so you're automatically met with that whenever trying to have some sort of relationship. And I think then as a barrier to help break that down, we first need to recognize our shared humanness, our shared fact that we all eat, we all need shelter, we all actually rely on the same qualities of life as the next person, regardless of our skin color, regardless of where we live. And when you start showing those understandings in a real way, rather than just speak, I can preach all I like about how we're equal on the body, but if I'm not living like we're equal on the body, I'm going to be doing nothing. So, I mean, I could live here in Rondebosch and preach to someone from, one of the high-density suburbs like Khayelitsha or Langa and say how things are the way they should be, but because of this very real difference between where you live and where I live, it's not, the message is not going to land.
Yes.
And that I think has been the biggest barrier here, because unfortunately a lot of our preachers, as you would note, come from overseas. And so coming from overseas have maybe different mentalities or different ideas about what happens or what should happen. And of course, South Africa has produced many of its own preachers and sannyasis. And I think those avenues are yet to really kind of take their full fruition. I think a lot of the preachers that we have are still, if you want to just kind of use the analogy of ecology, they're still under the shade of the bigger trees. And I think those bushes yet haven't seen the light of day in terms of the kind of African, if you want to call it, direction of preaching or preaching to the local people or preaching at the human level, I think.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. So talking about Kadamba Kamaraj, I mean, if you're looking at the physical, psychological background, I mean, he wouldn't fit. He's not allowed to fit. But he definitely delivered that human element. From your observation, from your experience, how did you see his approach, his interactions? How did you find him actually doing that, and especially for the African population?
Yeah, I think His Holiness Kadamba Kanana Swami was a. I think he even admitted himself he's a walking irony. That especially here in Africa, where, and particularly here in South Africa, where the Dutch were the first colonists, the first Europeans that settled here, and coming from that background, understanding it rather. I think Kadamba Kanana Swami was someone who sought to understand his country's history, or his, you can call it his race's history, and their influence on other people's, and maybe got to terms with his own, not guilt in the sense that he should be guilty for something that his ancestors have done, but a sense of responsibility to maybe correct some of the things that they have done. And of course, that's not to say that Maharaj came and tried to correct everything the Dutch did. No, but in his small ways, I believe he tried to, and again, you mentioned this word, bring the human element. He showed that his humanity, be it Dutch, be it Indian, be it whatever the case may be, can transcend these racial categories, these racial boundaries. And I think through that, and especially through something like his kirtans really got the sense of aliveness out of you, which I think everyone can attest to is human. That, I mean, even not even human, it's just a living entity. You can sometimes see dogs dancing in Maharaj's kirtans. But that, I think that appeal and that call and that recognition within himself to say maybe there is some sort of responsibility I have to correct some ill that history has done, in combination, I think made him a very effective preacher here in South Africa. And that's why his legacy, I think, will still remain on, even if many of, sorry to say this, even if many of his disciples may not continue on in the movement, I think many of his disciples will continue to be his disciples and carry the mission, and maybe not carry the organization.
I see.
Yeah.
What sort of convinced you, or sort of like made you think, okay, this is the person to take shelter of, this person to guide me? What was like that hitting moment?
You wanna wear my watch? I must be honest, at first I didn't see him.
Okay.
I first met Maharaj at it was 10 years ago at a Nishringadev Appearance Day, and I had the opportunity to hear him speak and be convinced that this character, this personality that he was speaking about was definitely a higher power. I came to that conclusion that day, that evening, after hearing him speak, that there is a higher power, and that higher power is personal, and that person is present in my heart. Those three things I concluded from Maharaj's lecture that night. And if I had a chance to go back to that moment, you know, when I first heard Maharaj speak, I would have, at that point, just kind of laid down flat and just asked to be, you know, his disciple. But it took me almost 5 years later to really kind of turn back and realize, man, actually I've been listening to this guy speak for so many years and interacted with him, but I didn't actually take him as a guide. I didn't actually take him as shelter, because he also never pushed it on anyone. He really kind of opened himself up to be a friend to anyone who wanted to be, and that's how I accepted him. I accepted him as a friend, and even so, sometimes as a brother. So I'll give you one anecdote. One time he was in Santon, and we had been kind of following him from Soweto Rath Yatra, then to Santon, and I eventually see him, and I'm like, we just got here, the lecture had just finished. I just said to him, Maharaj, I just came to say bye, because I know you're leaving from here, you're going, I don't know when the next time we're going to see you. I came to say bye. He just grabs me by the shoulder and says, you know what? Bye means brother. So it's okay, brother. And it didn't hit me like the significance of that moment and the significance of what he meant at that point, because after that I asked him for Diksha. I asked him for to take shelter as an official, so to speak, spiritual master. And only later on did I sit back and think to myself, he accepted me long ago.
Yeah, right.
He accepted me actually as a brother, as a friend.
Yeah.
I'm coming here with this kind of humble, I want to be disciple, I want to be student. Actually, he had accepted me long ago. So I can drop that false pretense.
Yes.
I can drop this idea that I need to be such and such a kind of student. He's already accepted me.
Mm.
And that was the kind of humanity that hit me, I think.
Yeah,
That's
right.
it, actually. And then another thing that he also kind of, that I feel I carry on to this day is, he never gave me a message or an instruction that was outside of myself.
Okay.
Or that I myself, so to speak, didn't have already for myself. And I'll give you an example. I often came to Maharaj complaining about this idea that, ISKCON is not yet doing the farm communities. Why not? We need to be, Prabhupada said, and he says, yes, there's this, and so many people are doing it in there, and, he very nicely trying to just take away my anxiety and help me try to see the real situation, which I wasn't seeing at that point. But then at one point, I sensed a shift in his mood and maybe a certain urgency. He says, Jagad, I think you're right. And I think you should achieve your dreams for Krishna. And my dream at this point was really kind of espousing, we need to get some sort of social, ecological movement happening here in South Africa. That's the only way I see our preaching making tangible effect on people's lives. Because we have urban centers, we have 5 or 6 urban centers in major urban cities, but the kind of turnover rate, or the kind of, you could say, conviction rate has been the same since 1975 when Prabhupada came.
Yeah.
So if the model is the same, we're just getting more and more centers, but the turnout is the same. There's something maybe not working,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to be the critic that says that, but that's for someone else to say. I'm saying, let's try an alternative.
Sure.
I'm saying, let's go to the land. I'm saying, Prabhupada even said it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we have to follow everything that Prabhupada said like verbatim, but there's very many things that Prabhupada said that are very relevant to our context and time.
Yeah.
And if we actually sat back and thought about how to apply ourselves to those things, I think we might find more success in the things that he's asked us to do.
Yeah.
And so when Maharaj then told me, do your dream for Krishna, I think that was for me the moment of realization of spiritual master, disciple. I really accepted him then.
Yeah.
I said, wow, he's someone who's seeing my heart. He's someone who knows what's in my heart. He's not trying to convince it to change or convince it to do something else because they see some other better path for you or something. No, he saw me as I am, and he said, apply you as you are to Krishna.
Wow.
And that was me accepting also him as my spiritual master and guide at that point.
That's amazing. Yeah, I guess he's given you some service, some instruction. What does that look like? Is it something in the academic world that you're working on or doing?
So the academic side is also something Maharaj encouraged me to continue with, because when I first met him in 2015, I was on the precipice of quitting. I was in my third year rather, but I was repeating my second year because I had practically failed everything. And at that point, I was really, like I said, I was questioning life. I was questioning what's the purpose of everything. And Maharaj encouraged me, just carry on with the degree, finish it off. You'll be better off for it, and really just kind of encouraged. And when I had my degree, like, might as well just carry on with the next one. And you're here in South Africa. Who's getting a job these days without a master's anyway? Just get a master's. Very casually encouraging me that way. I got my master's degree, and Maharaj is like, well, you know what? The sky is the limit, man. Why not just go to the top? Just go get the doctorate. Just carry on. So in that way, he's really been subtly encouraging me, and I feel that's one reason I do it. The other reason is I've also wanted to extend myself in academia. I see that as an avenue for really influencing a lot of people. So I am currently pursuing a PhD in sustainable development, and the topic I'm investigating at the moment is actually revolving around the Bhakti Yoga Society here in South Africa, and you could say its historical manifestation and possibly its future output.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of experimenting with that. Not yet sure what else is going to happen there. I just know it's like a case study, and Bhakti Yoga Society will be the heart of that case study.
Sure. I think is there anything you want to add in particular in relation to your service, Maharaj, Krishna Consciousness in South Africa?
Yeah, maybe one anecdote about Kadamba Kanana Swami in Africa. We had a kirtan. Well, there was a kirtan organized, but no equipment organized.
Okay.
And I don't know if you were there. Were you there for that
I
kirtan?
don't know. Maybe.
Okay.
Where was it?
It was in Durban. There was a color. I think it was 2017 or 2018.
Okay.
A color splash.
Okay. Right.
And there was a kirtan organized. Maharaj was leading, but there was no mic stand.
Okay.
There was a microphone and everything, but no mic stand.
Yeah.
So just kind of seeing the situation, I said, okay, I'll go hold the mic, thinking maybe I just need to. But I didn't realize that when Maharaj kind of, of course I was holding the microphone for Kadamba Kanana Swami, but what I didn't realize about Maharaj was the standards at which he expects service done for him or with him. I thought I was just going to hold the mic there and just casually relax and just...
Yeah.
Maharaj kept my arms straight out and like, you better be a mic stand. If you chose to be a mic stand, you're gonna be rigid like a mic stand. So he kept my arms straight out and he made me sing.
Oh.
So he said, there isn't enough, because he kept coming back to me and says there isn't enough speakers giving him feedback,
Okay.
so he can't hear himself sing. So he
Okay.
needs someone to sing back to him to hear where the tune is.
Right. Yeah.
And he said that all so fast within the half that he's not singing, and he had to explain all that and like why I had to sing and why I had to hold the mic so firmly. I walked away from that. I held the mic for like 1.5 hours, by the way.
Wow.
I walked away from that experience knowing if you're going to serve Maharaj, you have to be strict, you have to be strong, you have to be firm, and you have to be ready to move where they're moving. You can't, it was a grander realization in service in general, that you serve in the way in which the recipient wants to be served. And I think that was my kind of introduction by Yagya, like hold that microphone steady, and so I'll remember that day. I was the microphone from Maharaj, stand from Maharaj.
That's
And,
really cool.
yeah, I think maybe that's how I'd like to serve also, is just be a mouthpiece, be a firm kind of microphone stand. That's all.
Amazing.
So
This is
thank you
awesome.
for the
Thank you.
opportunity to
That was
talk
cool.
about Maharaj.
Thank you so much.